You're listening to episode 103 of the Nichole Banks Podcast, Boundaries with Michaela Gaffin Stone. Welcome to the Nichole Banks Podcast, where divorced women heal, grow, and find new love and dare to begin thriving. I'm Nichole, your divorce recovery coach and happy hour queen. If you're a Gen Xer ready to shake things up, level up, and have some fun, you're in the right place. Buckle up. We're getting into today's episode starting now. We're joined by a returning guest, someone who's no stranger to the podcast and has shared so many insightful tips with us before. Michaela Gaffin Stone. Hello, hello. She is a board certified behavioral analyst, and Michaela has a knack for breaking down how you can use boundaries to protect our time, energy, and mental well-being. So whether you're navigating family expectations, gift-giving stress, or just trying to avoid burnout, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Michaela, you've been on the show before. We're so glad to have you back. To kick things off, can you give us a quick refresher on what boundaries really are and why they're so important?
Oh, absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me back. It's lovely to be here.
Yay, we love you.
Oh, thank you. So, boundaries are something that are rapidly disappearing from the human landscape. It is the most strange thing to see because it's the thing we need the most. Boundaries define where you are, the space you take up, and what your parameters are in any given situation. It also defines everybody else's. So, if you start a new job, for example, and the boss just says, okay, sit down at that desk and get your work done. And then they go away. And they haven't given you anything to work with. You don't know what it's supposed to look like, how much is enough, how much is not enough. Like you have no idea. So you throw something out there and you are more than likely going to miss the mark because you have no parameters or boundaries, right? So
Right.
boundaries are definition. That's another way of saying it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But can you tell me why you think they're so important, especially as we enter the holiday season?
Oh gosh, yes. So holiday season is a time where we have stresses coming in from old stories, from people that we have familiar interactions with. And if you don't set up some boundaries, those lines get blurred very quickly, and you can end up in situations that are more than uncomfortable. They mess with your sleep, they're so bad, but also you lose track of where you want to be going. So, for example, if it's boundaries over how much money are you going to spend this holiday, and you just don't have it to spend it. I mean, in this economy, we typically don't have it to spend it. But
Right.
if you don't have a boundary around that, like this is how much I have and I'm not going beyond it, and this is where I will put it, and this is where I won't, like if you don't have clarity, then you can end up way overspending, totally losing it. And now you've got January to consider, okay, how do I get my credit cards paid? How am I
Right.
going to cover my next rent?
Right.
That's the problem with not having a boundary is you end up in that position.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And we know that so many of us feel overwhelmed by the family commitments, by social media, whether it's all the advertising on TV of the Hallmark family, that kind of thing, and the pressure to please others, true, too, right? So, how can we recognize when it's time to say no and actually create some breathing room? Are there some warning signs that you can give us?
There's a lot of different things depending on what you're looking at. If it's pressure from media, whether it's social media, TV, whatever, then that's the first place you can completely discount because obviously they're pressuring you. They want you to buy their stuff. So if you can even look at that with a different perspective and see if you can pick out how they're marketing it to you, it can be a kind of fun project that diffuses the message, I gotta buy this thing, right? If you can look at it, one of my favorite examples is a breakfast cereal that is in the shape of an O. And, you might as well eat the cardboard box, honestly, for what's in there. But if you
Right.
look at the advertisement, what you've got is this happy looking couple who are both perfectly proportioned, right? And they're beautifully dressed. And then they have these kids who have, matching socks on, and they're ready to go to school, and they're actually fine about going to school. Like, what kind of household is this? Even the dog isn't shedding, right? There's no coffee ring on the table, nothing. The only thing that's moving, that kind of has dimension to it, really, is the cereal. So you can have that lifestyle. You can have all of that perfection if you buy this cereal. That's the message. Now,
Right.
if you can look at an advertisement to see, what are they selling me really? Because the product they're selling you, the toy that your kid's got to have or else, no, what they're selling you is, my child won't pull down the Christmas tree and swing the cat by its tail if my child is happy with this toy. It's not true, but that's what they're selling you, is the lifestyle. So
Right.
if you can change how you look at that, it's kind of a long way of saying you can diffuse that whole input from that kind of media.
I love it.
It's kind of a cool tool, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it does really depend on where this pressure is coming from. For myself, the obligation of being Martha Stewart in the kitchen and the way the table is set. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Martha Stewart and I love a beautiful presentation. But the most important is that everybody arrives safely, everybody's warm and comfortable. It's not always about the food being out on time. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, it was like 4 hours late. I had just moved here and I moved into a new home and I had a convection oven, and not knowing how to use it properly, it delayed everything. So
Right.
here, and I could never wonder why I couldn't smell the turkey coming out of the oven. Normally it smells yummy, but I'm thinking, oh, it's just a new oven. It's just holding all the smells in. Wasn't even on the right way. So anyway, but the reality is, it's like the pressure shouldn't come from outside sources.
But it always does.
Yeah, it really is.
So, as you just described, the whole Martha Stewart presentation, if that makes you happy, if it ticks your boxes, then that's a good thing to aim for. But if you're doing it to impress other people, if you're doing it because you think they expect it, then that is a great place to set a boundary.
Yes.
Hey, Grandma, I know your house looks like Martha Stewart's visited, and that is amazing and wonderful. I can't do that though, or that doesn't work for me, is even more honest, because yes, you can, but you don't really want to. So, you know, that's not really my style. So it's going to look this way when you come to my house. And you set your plate, you set your table the way you want it to, not trying to be somebody else's. Because here's the thing, when you put down what you need and what you want to do, and you start trying to please other people, you put yourself out there in a vulnerable place where you cannot win, because they will always have a judgment about that. And it's inauthentic. You're kind of stepping out of your space. So what a good way to determine this is, what would work for you? What makes you happy? Where would you feel unstressed and content? And if that is a chaotic household, then just let people know that's what they're coming to. You don't have to be anything.
You're right. And I absolutely love those questions that you need to ask yourself. I always coach awareness is first. And if you're feeling uneasy about doing it a different style, right, then maybe it's time to just take a look at and check in with yourself. What style do I want, or what do I want to present? It doesn't always have to be A, B, and C. You could change it up, because guess what? It's your holiday too, right? So I love
Exactly.
those questions. And it's self-awareness, really being able to reflect and taking that time. I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful way
And
to
and
present.
it's allowing yourself to be important. It's allowing yourself to take center stage. If it's your house, it's your center stage, right? If
Absolutely.
this is your environment, then actually it's your environment. So how do you want it to look? And if that's chaos, so be it. If that's Martha Stewart, so be it.
Yeah.
But it's not what you think other people want. Because, sometimes the funny thing about this is, we think other people want a certain thing. And the reality is they don't, but they think you want it. And there's a
Right.
lot of unspoken assumptions happening. And so everybody's sitting down at the type of table that they don't really prefer, and nobody's aware of it. And there's a
Mhm.
tension just from that. So that communication piece with yourself first, and then
Mm-hmm.
just letting other people know how that's going to look. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a great way of setting the stage.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so saying no can
Mm.
feel incredible. It's an incredible feeling, but also guilt inducing, right? So if we're like, oh, we're not doing, like the example could be, we're not doing fabric napkins, we're going to do paper napkins. Okay. And your mother comes to the table, what? Why are we being served with paper napkins and not cloth napkins? So we're like, no, but it's something that is her tradition, something she's had for years and years. How do we remove the guilt inducing when it comes to saying no? How can we free ourselves of that guilt?
I would say the first thing is to recognize that the problem actually isn't yours. It's the person whose lens, they're looking through their lens. So if mom wants cloth napkins and you offer paper napkins and mom isn't happy about that, the problem is her story and it's not your problem, actually.
Okay, so wait a minute. Can you do me a favor and repeat that?
Absolutely. So, and I'll repeat it in a different way because
Okay.
when somebody looks at you and says, oh, hey, Nichole, I see that you've got black hair, but I think it should be blonde.
Oh
Well,
dear.
does that mean it should? No, it
Mm,
means my lens says it should be blonde. Whatever somebody else is telling you, it isn't about you. We think it is, it feels like it is, but it isn't. It's their lens, it's what their story tells them. So if mom comes and says, what is this? You're using paper napkins? What kind of household is this? I want to see cloth. Wait, what are you doing? You get that kind of response, then it's okay, mom, but I'm not doing that this year. So these will work. This is fine. And then the trick is to let it go because it's not actually a big deal. We can make it a big deal. We
sure.
feed it a whole lot of energy and attention, but is it worth your time and attention, really? No.
Yeah.
Mom will get over it. The paper napkins will work. And that's your meal will continue. You're not eating the paper napkins. It's not the most important thing.
Right. Right.
But
And what,
prioritizing too.
say it again.
Prioritizing too. You're like, is this something I need to be worried about? Do I
Right.
really need to feel guilty about this?
Right. What's interesting too, though, is that we do internalize that, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm displeasing her again, or wow, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing about it later, right? Oh, it was so beautiful, except for we didn't have cloth napkins. I'm just so surprised, right? And it's so crazy because that is my mother to
Uh-huh.
it, where she has such high expectations, and then when she's let down, the wrath then comes. It's like the tidal wave of anguish. And you're just like, is this my problem now? Is it your problem? But when I set the boundary with her, I'm doing it first and foremost for myself. You are welcome to my home. Right. And then the reality is that's on you. That's now your responsibility for your actions. I can't control her lens. I can't control her wrath, but I can control how I respond to it. And I love that because it really does allow me to respond or not respond guilt free. And that was the whole start of this part of the conversation. Like, how do we say no without feeling guilty?
So there's a couple of things I'd like to bring in here. First of all, when you have a situation like that with mom, so this is a lifetime history, you have a lot of examples that will all fit that box. So since childhood, you have been storing this information in your body. So when you were triggered by the look or the sigh or that barely perceptible kind of thing that you get, right? That trigger sparks this massive emotional response that may feel like, oh no, I'm overreacting. Oh, this isn't worth this. That's not what you're bringing to the table, if you'll pardon the expression. What you're doing is bringing up everything that ever happened that fits in that box. It's not intentional on your part that happens, but that trigger is attached to everything. So it is huge because it's a lifetime of stuff. It's a lifetime of disapproval, of mini comments, of subtle manipulations that are all fitting in that box. And that one sigh or that look can flip that switch and the whole lot comes up, right?
Yep. Yep.
So one of the ways to handle that before it becomes a thing, and this could take a little practice, but the holidays are a great time to start, is that conversation you can have in your head where I'm going to do this and she's going to say that, and then I'm going to say this, and it's going to go, okay, brilliant. You have some power there. You can change your part of that script. So when she responds in a certain way, instead of doing what you're going to do because it always goes that way, change it. Do
Okay.
something unexpected, ideally that's positive. And then what happens is mom or whoever is in that position no longer has the cue to work from that's usually there, because you have that conversation in your head, but so does
Right.
she. Typically think the other person isn't doing this, but they totally are. They're having exactly the same thing. So if you take their cue away, you derail the whole process
I
that's
love
about
it.
to go down,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that can really shift things. The other thing I want to bring up is, or reiterate even, setting expectations. 100%. There's no ambiguity. There's no if you don't mind, if it's okay. It's just, hey, thought you'd like to know. This is how it's going to look. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Done. And
Yeah.
then that's a great time for her to look at you and say, oh, well, really? That? And then you can say, well, it's interesting that you have a problem with it. Like, what's the concern? Ask something that you wouldn't normally ask, or
Yeah.
comment in a way that you wouldn't normally comment. And then you can kind of get over some of that heavy ground before the event even happens.
I love that. I think that it's a beautiful strategy to come in with some kind of calm, right? Setting the expectations. So if they have high expectations, they can now lower them. you know, and I feel like if it's not met to their standard or their quality of X, Y, and Z, then you know what? They can host it the following year, whatever, whatever, right? Again, just being able to come in with a strategy of one or two. So that's one. Can you come up with another one of being able to come in with the mindset or the planning of mindset where it's going to be calming?
Absolutely. So, great question, because I had planned to say this anyway, which
Okay.
is have some tools ready that you've practiced a little bit and feel comfortable with, such as, oh, hey, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for your flexibility in the timing, or thank you for your understanding about such and such. But whenever you feel tempted to apologize, and typically there's going to be apologies coming up when you have that kind of back and forth relationship,
Sure.
practice switching the apology to a thank you. So instead of I'm sorry I'm late, thank you for being patient.
Yep.
I'm sorry dinner took so long. Wow, it's been great to enjoy your company for this extra time. What is the positive view? Flip the switch. Don't go into that apologetic stance, because whenever somebody's apologetic, it brings the other person onto them to kind of criticize, because you're
Absolutely.
setting up for that, right?
Oh, I get it. I
I
love
worked
that.
with somebody once. This is a good example, I think, of not apologizing and when that's a good idea. So she used to be very concerned about being late for a family she worked with. So she'd text them very often to say, I think I'm going to be there on time, but traffic's heavy. I might be a bit late. And she was never late. She always got there on time. But that family actually complained to the company that she was always late, because their perception was, as she's sending these messages saying, I'm sorry, I think I might be late, they kind of took it into their minds that she was late. And the poor thing actually wasn't, but she
Hmm.
set herself up for that perception. Whereas if she hadn't sent those texts, or if she'd said, hey, I'm going to be there soon, I'll see you on time, they would have had a very different perspective. So she set herself up for difficulties by trying to be set extra nice, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
By being
Interesting.
considerate, she actually set herself up for trouble.
Interesting. So I know that there's a lot of family dynamics, sometimes friend dynamics, you know, since you've been on the show last, I've really have taken my audience to assisting divorced women, and life and navigating life after divorce and breakup and heartache and finding new love and things like that. This may be the first time they've been at a holiday without the kids due to, visitation, or without the ex-husband, or, there could be even a significant, a loss, a loved one could have passed, or maybe it's just empty chairs because they couldn't show, right?
Mhm.
What can we do to prepare for that? What wisdom do you have that we could draw from and maybe even practice prior to next week?
Actually, yes, please do practice it. What I would offer is, first of all, don't expect it to look the same. Don't set yourself up with empty chairs. If there's going to be empty chairs, maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
What else would you like to do? A new tradition that's,
Yes.
I know that's an oxymoron, but work with
Oh,
me.
I
A
love it.
new tradition that you're starting now. What
Yeah.
would you like this year to be? Do you need to go out somewhere? Do you want to do a trip that you've not done before and it's on your wish list? Do you want to stay in your pajamas all day? Have you had to do the Martha Stewart thing and actually you want to eat fish and chips? Like, how do you want it to look? Because we have these stories. Oh, it's Thanksgiving, it's got to look this way. It's Christmas, it has to look this way. We
Right.
always do this at such a time.
Right.
If you're newly divorced, or even if it's been a while and you haven't figured this part out yet, your life is now different. You were not in the space you were in before, so it's going to look different. Do you want to be in charge of that, or do you want to feel victimized by it? And
Yeah.
to be in charge of it, make some decisions now. What actually would you like it to be?
Yeah.
And make that. It's not going to be what it used to be, so don't even try for that.
Yeah.
That's just going to set you up for missing those chairs, those empty chairs.
I totally agree. I do. I absolutely agree. So let's turn this conversation just a little bit. What would you advise, or nuggets, golden nuggets? What's the words that I would need to hear myself when you have someone, say Aunt Nosy Rosie, that's wanting to know what's going on with your divorce or your love life, or can't you just make it work, or what kind of, because sometimes they mean, right? Our loved ones mean well. It's been a minute since we've caught up. They're only hearing the gossip down the grapevine. What are some things that we can do? Now, sometimes I always recommend diverting the conversation, making it short, sweet, and polite, but turning it back on them. But what else can we do, or how can we prepare ourselves for those kind of conversations? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
First of all, I love your idea of diverting and keeping it short and sweet. Absolutely. Another thing you can do, which is kind of along those lines, really, is to say, Aunt Mary, it's wonderful to see you. That's not really a subject I want to talk about during Thanksgiving. Can we meet up another time? Leave it out there floating.
Okay, so I love that. I didn't mean to interrupt. I absolutely love that. So you're basically saying, thank you for your concern, but maybe this isn't the right timing for that conversation. Is that what I
Right.
hear you saying?
Yeah. And
Okay.
you can say, I really don't have my attention in that direction right now. I want to make sure that dinner is a lovely meal and I want to put my focus there. Can you help me in the kitchen a minute? And, let's go do something fun. And if she
Yeah,
keeps bringing it up, and chances are she will, because people get very interested in other people's divorces,
of course.
then just keep on reiterating. This is where you set your boundary and you maintain your boundary. Okay, Aunt Mary, really, I do appreciate your interest. I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah,
And the more succinct you are, the more difficult it is for her to find a way to bring the subject up again.
yeah,
And, hopefully she will take the not too subtle hint and stop talking about it. Divorces are a fascinating thing. People who've had nothing to do with your marriage whatsoever feel the need to take sides.
yes,
They
they
feel the
do.
need to have opinions. They feel the need to start talking about the other person. And in all of those cases, and for your mental health, I'm going to say, don't let them do it. if you think they're going to do it before they get there, set a boundary before they arrive. Contact them and say, hey, Aunt May, I haven't seen you for a while, and I'm sure you're interested to know the latest on this, but I don't want to talk about that this holiday. Can we
Yeah.
save it for another time? I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing you, and leave it.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that takes practice. I
It
throw this
does.
out there, and I love what you said. Is like this is the perfect time to start practicing because it doesn't have to be perfect, and it may not come out as we think it is in our head. It may not come out of our mouth that way. It may come a little harsh or a little brass, but the reality is the more you practice it, the better it's going to become. But being able to realize that, hey, first and foremost, a boundary isn't truly a boundary unless you've clearly have communicated it, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
sometimes clearly, especially if we're new to the the boundary idea or reinstating boundaries, sometimes the clear is a little muddied waters, right? So you don't really want to have that conversation, but instead of being short and abrupt, like, I don't want to talk about it, because that can happen immediately, right? You've been triggered and your feathers are up and you've been drinking and they've been drinking and someone starts bombarding you and you are now are feeling like you've been backed in a corner, and then you come out, I don't want to talk about it, with an attitude, right, and sharp tongue. So listeners, listen, if you are right multitasking, come back to us, because this is the meat of the podcast. Actions and words have to match. You have to be able to have a nice, clear, communicative style saying, you know what, this isn't really the time. I'm so thrilled that you're here. It's so good to see you. This really isn't the time. Can we table it for another time? Give me a call in a month, or give me a call, after I've de-stuffed my stuffing, whatever the case may be, right? But the idea behind it is practice does make progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one is saying you have to have the perfect boundary. That's not what we're saying at all. Is that what we're saying?
No,
No,
nothing
we're
has to
not
be
saying that.
perfect. We're
It
human.
just needs to be practiced. I feel like you come in with a little practice, it starts to make some progress. And all of a sudden now you've taken your boundaries beyond Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? You're doing it in the neighborhood and in your home and in the community and at work. And it just feels so, so good. I love that.
And another thing that just came to mind for stress and boundaries and so on, and especially as you mentioned, you may have had some drinks, the other person's had some drinks. It can be tempting when all of the guards are down to start talking badly about the other person, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this would work for the listener, but what worked for me, so you find yours, but what worked for me when I was going through my divorce was I made sure I never said anything about my spouse that I would not and could not say in front of my kids.
Love that.
And I would not say anything bad about my former spouse because you know what? The kids are listening, and that's 50% of their genetics. So if
Yeah.
you start dissing the 50% of their genetics, they feel badly about themselves. Now, do you really want to do that? So even if the other person is behaving badly, more so, you hold yourself to your own standards, regardless of what they're doing, so that in years to come, you can look back and your conscience is clear. You did
Yeah.
not get into the mudslinging. You did not go down that road. And if you have that boundary set, can I say this in front of my kids? It will be a lot easier to hold when you're in that environment that encourages you. Oh, but wasn't he terrible? He did this thing. No, not go in there. And
Yeah.
have your way of getting out of that. And you can simply say, you know what? I don't want to go into that kind of discussion today. We're here to have a good time. I'm just going to go and see if anybody needs any more drinks,
Yeah.
or do you need dessert or whatever it is, but go for a little walk so you can kind of breathe, even if it's to the bathroom, go and breathe for a little bit and then come back and start again.
Yes, and I love that because but it's going to happen. We know that over the millions of homes celebrating this holiday, it is going to happen, and then
Yep.
some, right? So the idea would be to deflect, divert, right? Remove yourself from that particular conversation. Oh, just a minute, and literally just remove yourself. If you don't have anything nice to say, just excuse me, 1 minute. Just point your finger up to the sky and say, "I'll be right back." and just go change your energy. That could go, oh, going out to the car to grab a sweater, or turning on the lights and turning them off. I don't care what it is, but then you come back, because once your body has changed its energy, your mindset will too, right? So you could even sneak out and make a quick phone call to a friend, a supportive friend who gets you, right? Who supports you, and just having them say kind words, or pulling up your iPhone or your smartphone and jotting down a thought or two. It doesn't have to be lashing out at that person. And it definitely doesn't have to be encouraging them to continue to bash the spouse, because I truly feel like it's not easy to accept, especially if you're not doing the bashing, but you're listening to the bash. You're doing this, it's like saying the same thing, right? If you don't stop it, it's like literally like you're agreeing with it. And I rather not have that conversation at all. It's none of their business. And so sometimes, out of the love and kindness, and like I said, majority of these family members and friends, they have good intentions and they mean, but like we said, the drinks are flowing, the stress is there, whatever have you, and maybe they haven't seen you in a while. But the idea is to just do you. This is your holiday too. And I feel like when we set you up for success, when we're setting you up for the boundaries, the guilt-free conversations, the diversions, things like that, you're going to walk into this family household with amazing tools and amazing confidence that you can conquer this stressful time of year without having to feel guilty, right?
Absolutely. And the first thing, very first thing you need to do is believe that you don't have to feel guilty. And not only do you not have to, but there's no reason to.
Yeah.
So, first of all, accept that you're exactly where you need to be and how you need to be. And you don't have to apologize to anybody for anything.
Yeah.
So, start from that place of strength. And
Yeah.
then if you go for a walk and you want to call a friend and they're not answering because they've got their own stuff going on, then another thing you can do is find your favorite uplifting song, put that on, and if you can dance around a little bit, very cool. Sing it at the top of your lungs, like whatever you need to do to shift that energy,
Yeah.
and then come back in. And that might take like 3.5 minutes. So maybe you're gone 5 minutes. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to mention the song on air, and if I'm not, please take it out. But one of my favorites is to listen to Unstoppable by Sia.
Oh
You
yeah.
listen to that and you're doing the victory pose and all the
Oh
rest of
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That shifts your energy when you go back in. Or Happy by Farrell. Like
Yeah.
what what else would work for you? What's your happy song? What shifts your energy? Even if other people aren't available to talk to you, rather than thinking, oh no, nobody's got time for me. Oh, I'm stuck with this. No, no, no. Go to your favorite song
Yeah.
because that will be there. And
I
that
have
can shift energy.
no, and I love that. I do have a question for you. So whose responsibility is it to do that, to take care of themselves? Whose responsibility is it?
It's always your own
Yeah.
because you cannot take responsibility for others' behavior. You can only take responsibility for yours.
That's right.
So here's the thing with shame and blame, for example, which we get into at this time of year big time,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
if you accept blame, or if you feel shamed about something, or you're throwing it at other people, any of those positions land you in a place of disempowerment. Because if you're saying, well, it's like this because that person did this thing, or because so and so, da da da. Okay, those things may be true, but if you're putting the emphasis on them, if you're putting the blame on them, then you're disempowering yourself by giving them your responsibility.
Yeah.
So while the things may have happened, nobody's arguing that. Doesn't it's not the key. The
Yeah.
key is what are you going to do now in taking responsibility for yourself. So,
Yeah.
okay, this situation is a thing. For example, you're going to have empty chairs. All right, you can sit there and mope about it and be sad and blame everybody else for the situation you're sitting in. Or you can just say, well, okay, it's not going to look that way this year. What else can I do? And look sort of with an open mind for the good things that you can do with this. It's your responsibility to look after you.
Yeah.
Nobody else can do that.
That's right. That's right. It's so interesting too, because I have a client who I had a session with this week, and she's just so mad. She's so angry. She's angry that she has to buy the time for the holidays. She's angry that she has to go to 3 different holidays for the holiday. She's just angry. And I said, maybe, just maybe, we should write down some things instead of being angry. What other emotions do you want to feel? Right? And is there an opportunity for you to release this anger prior to going to the event? And there's also the lead or the worst case scenario, which would be not going at all. Because when you come in with this attitude of hate and anger, and it's, scary, it's filled full of fear and fright and blame and shame game and all the things all the emotions we've been talking about, right? It just takes one sentence or one question that can trigger that. So maybe, you being responsible for you, it's okay to say, hey, I'm going to step away this year because it's my time. I need to do what I need to do on this day. Is there any shame or any blame in that idea?
None at all. The other thing I would say is the person who's very angry, I don't know her situation, obviously, but what I can say is quite often grief masquerades as anger. And
Absolutely.
so if you have a loss, like your marriage, for example, let's go with that one, then you can grieve that. And if you don't allow yourself to grieve that because of other people's opinions or even because of your own opinions, if you don't allow yourself to grieve that, then it will show up as anger. But it's
Absolutely.
okay to say, hey, I thought it was going to look this way, and I expected that, and I didn't get those things. And you experience, like feel that grief.
Yeah,
We typically stuff down our emotions because we're taught to do that as kids, right?
of course.
A parent doesn't like to see an angry child. That feels like defiance. A parent doesn't like to see a sad child because now you're kind of you've got to fix it. So we teach our kids to stuff emotions down. As adults, sometimes we can't even recognize the difference between grief and anger. They're awfully close.
Yeah,
So if this is something that's generalized, you're feeling it to everybody for everything, then I'm going to say it's a bigger deal than you think it is.
yeah,
And it's probably grief.
yeah,
So take some time for you, not from a place of, I'll show you, but more from a place of, I need to figure this out. I need to reflect and discover what you need.
yeah.
Because, sometimes we'll say, you got to look after you in the way that suits you, but you might not know what that is.
Right.
Be
There's a lot of
prepared to
women that
go on
don't.
discovery,
Yeah,
right? You might not know.
there's a lot of women that don't. The first assignment that they get from me when we work one-on-one is awareness. Like, when did this start? Oh, I don't know. Well, what was the triggering? Oh, well, I'm not sure, So sometimes the self-discovery is just truly being aware of this behavior counteracts this behavior, or these thoughts will now drive these feelings, right? Or these feelings will drive these actions, and the actions get these results. But if we're not aware of that, then all of a sudden, I'm a hot mess. I'm on a roller coaster without a seatbelt. I don't know how to get off it. I don't know what to do. So it is okay. And if you're listening to this, I want you to adhere that it is absolutely okay to take the day or that particular holiday or the holiday weekend for yourself. It's not greedy. It's not selfish. It's what you may need. You're the one that's going to decide that. And that's totally okay too.
Absolutely. And I think it's fascinating that as human beings, we get into this whole, it's greedy of me if I do this, or it's selfish of me. First of all, selfish, there's nothing wrong with being selfish in that you're looking after yourself. You're
Right.
not doing this at the expense of anyone else. So
That's
where's
right.
the problem? But we get these stories from people, and it all, if you look at it as a broader picture, all those things stop you from looking after you. Now, how can that possibly be beneficial to anyone? And if you are the hot mess who's about to lose the plot and yell at everybody, then in what way are you benefiting them by showing up? Are you
Such a great
actually
question.
doing them a favor?
No, you're not. Such a great question.
So,
Love
some
that.
clarity for yourself on, am I good company right now? Can I be good company right now? And do I want to be good company right now? And if
Yeah.
the answer to any of those is no, then guess what? You can have a day trip somewhere, or you can do a home spa, or you can watch your favorite Hallmark movies all day. Or in my case, I love to watch football. I'm a big American football fan. So I'm
Yeah.
going to be watching football that day. You
Love
know,
it. Yeah.
what do you want to do? What is your secret pleasure? Or what is the thing that you would love to do that you can't do if you're there doing battle with the family?
Yeah, I just think it's so insightful. I feel like the whole conversation has been so insightful, and I'm just hoping that when it lands on the right person that needs to hear this, is they're going to be able to go, okay, I need to become aware. I need to be asking these questions. I need to be able to say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm okay with just doing it my way. It's not about the pleasing game, and most women are very people pleasing. But what is pleasing you this time of year? What is pleasing you in your time of life, right? And if you don't know, next Thursday may be the golden ticket, the golden opportunity to say, today's the day I'm just going to journal. I'm going to write. I'm going to resource. I'm going to research. I'm going to let it out. I'm going to do whatever. And I'm going to be beyond words of expression to say, be grateful for that day, because that may be the day, because you're only literally one choice away from a completely different life.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes, you are one choice away. And the thing is, you got to give yourself permission to discover. You've got to give yourself kindness and allow yourself to be who you are and to not fit in other people's boxes. We're taught from little, you don't want to sit on Santa's lap? Well, tough, go sit on Santa's lap,
Yeah.
and we'll take the picture, smile. And you're made to do things that you don't want to do. You don't have autonomy as a kid. You get
Yeah.
pushed around to do all these things. Well, now you're an adult, you don't have to do that anymore. We're all carrying those stories forward, but you can make a conscious choice to say, no, thanks, I'm not going to do that now. But just think of all the possibilities you have, depending on where you live. What would you like to do in your environment that is completely different this year?
Love it.
What would work for you? And if it's being in your pajamas all day and drinking hot chocolate and looking at the TV, so be it. If it's going out for a hike in the hills, so be it. Like, what do you want? It doesn't have to look like other people's Thanksgiving. And here's the thing, those advertisements that show you the big happy family with the giant turkey and all the rest of it? That stuff isn't real. And a lot of households, most households, I would dare to say, don't look like they show you on the screen.
Right.
That is fiction trying to sell you something. It's not fact. It's just
Yeah.
pressure. Hey, you're less than you could be if you're not living like this. Well, it's rubbish.
I just, wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's such an insightful conversation. Michaela Gaffin Stone, thank you so much. I hope you are walking away with some powerful tools to help navigate the holiday season with a little more peace and a lot more boundaries, whether you're learning to say no, managing family dynamics, or just trying to protect your energy. Michaela's tips are truly game changers. Michaela, thank you so much for joining us today. Your wisdom is always so appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me here. I love to talk with you, and it's been great to see you again.
So for everyone listening, if you're ready to start setting those boundaries but need a little extra guidance, be sure to check out Michaela's previous episode, episode 72, Gen X vibes. And we do get into that. We get into the Gen X everything. So be sure to check that out, of course, right here on the Nichole Banks Podcast. And follow her on social media if you want more tips and tricks. I'll be sure to throw all of her contacts and information in the show notes. Remember, setting boundaries isn't about being selfish. It's about prioritizing your own well-being so you can show up as your best self, especially during the chaos of the holidays. And don't forget, you have permission to say no. That's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you're feeling as refreshed as a spiked lemonade on a hot day. If you love what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and spread the love. Want to go deeper? Check out my courses, women's retreats, and the Dare to Begin membership, where we put everything we've learned into action. NicholeBanks.com. Don't forget, I spell my name with an H. NicholeBanks.com. Until next time, keep leveling up and dare to begin.